Hello, Andrew Collishaw, homeopath and naturopath, and a very warm welcome to today's topic. This is a really important issue in terms of naturopathic and homeopathic medicine, and that is the connection between your mental, emotional being and how that affects you physically, and the implications that has for your health and your healing. You see, after many, many years of clinical practice, this is something that I've become more and more convinced about in terms of seeing just how important it is in many, many situations to address that mental, emotional side of things, because that can often be a major factor in affecting someone's health and ability to heal. Now, it doesn't always apply to everybody. There are plenty of clients that I've seen over the years where we don't focus on what's happening emotionally. We just focus purely at a physical level. And it could be any condition: hay fever, a skin problem, psoriasis, it could be constipation. We just focus physically. At the other end of the spectrum, there are many people where we just focus on what's happening mentally and emotionally and use medicines to balance that side of things. And so there's a spectrum. And we need to think about, well, where do you fit in to that spectrum? And it's not like it's fixed either, because you might start here and we might move this way or that way. And it's very important just to have that understanding, or make that conscious connection between the physical and mental, emotional interaction, because it can make all the difference between how getting mediocre results and actually getting really fantastic results with your health and your healing. So one common example is if we get stressed, then you get your blood pressure goes up, your heart will start beating faster, your respiratory rate will increase, there might be sweating. So there's a direct physical reaction to that emotional stress. Now, this is obviously very well documented, and it's something that we experience all the time. And that shows at that very obvious level that emotional physical connection. Another example, so you might find that in people where they've been very depressed for a period of time, then that starts to affect them physically. And classically we see, for example, energy levels really sinking low, sleeping patterns being affected. So there again we see a very obvious connection between what's happening emotionally and what's happening physically. Now, they're just two examples where we can see those effects. Now, of course, there's a whole range of different connections that can be made between the emotions and the physical body. Cardiovascular disease, for example, there's a lot of evidence to show that the mental, emotional factors can affect our cardiovascular health, and stress is perhaps the most obvious one. So what I'd like you to be thinking about is making that connection for yourself between what's happening emotionally for you and how that affects you physically. Now, it can be very obvious things like the sort of examples that I've just given, but I want you to go a step further. I want you to be thinking a little bit in a little bit more detail about that interaction. So, for example, you might find that your eczema might flare up under certain situations. So what's the feeling, what's the emotion there, and what's the observation there with your skin? And it's really important to be making these conscious connections between the two things, because I think when you make that realization, that helps us to understand and bring about some sort of balance. At least it helps us to acknowledge that yes, there is a connection between how I feel emotionally. So when I get really, really angry, I find that I actually become constipated the next day. So there is that connection, and to make that a conscious thing is a step in the right direction in terms of beginning to control and modify those reactions and to strengthen up the body so that it doesn't react so much to what's happening emotionally. Now, it's true that some people will find making these connections more difficult than other people. I see clients where we talk about the emotional side of things, and it doesn't come easily. It's actually a difficult area to be thinking about. On the other hand, there are people, as I said before, where we just focus on the emotional side of things, and for those people it can be a little bit easier sometimes to make those links. So I would encourage you, wherever you are on that scale, just to be putting your mind in that direction, saying, okay, well, maybe there is a connection there. Maybe it's easy for you to see that, or maybe it isn't easy, but just acknowledge that, okay, perhaps there is a connection there. Let's be open to looking at what those connections might be and making them a conscious process. So how do we treat the situation where we've got the emotions affecting the physical body? Well, I guess there are many ways that we can deal with it. There are psychological approaches. Here in the clinic we use homeopathic approaches mainly, but I really do think there's a lot of power in just bringing it to your awareness that there is indeed this connection. And I think if we can just become more conscious of that, then that's moving us in the right direction. But in terms of what we do here at the clinic, some of you will already be taking homeopathic medicine. If you are, this will be a little bit more familiar, but what we do, often where there are emotional factors, we find that homeopathic medicine is very good at being able to help bring about some sort of balance. And an example is, say for example, if someone's very upset, very stressed with grief, and that's been going on for a period of time, that will start to affect them physically in various ways. And so there are many medicines that we would use, and one, for example, a common one is called Ignatia, and that's a medicine that we use when there is acute grief. It just can help to balance out the nervous system. You're not trying to remove the grief, you're not trying to remove emotions, you're trying to bring about balance, to soften the edges sometimes. And there are a whole range of different medicines we use. And having said that, I also find that there are times when herbal and nutritional medicine can be really effective in supporting what's happening emotionally as well. So if you're undergoing a period of extreme anger and frustration, then to make sure that your nutritional levels are adequate, and to make sure that you're being nourished with certain herbal medicines, that can help you to physically cope and endure that intense emotional, angry state. And it can help minimise the negative effects of that. So it really depends on the person, on how, what sort of symptoms somebody has, as to the sort of medicine we use. Now, this isn't psychology. Psychology would be another approach to dealing with that connection in a different way. We use medicines and treat this medicinally to bring about a balance at a deep inner level, if you like. So your healthy activity for this week is to have a think about this mental, emotional connection with your physical body. Now, what I want you to do is just to be able to bring that connection into your conscious mind, if it's not already. I want you to see what those connections are and see if you can notice what happens physically depending on how you are emotionally. Now, for some of you, you can just start off with fairly obvious things, like, running for a bus, feeling stressed because you're going to miss it. what changes there are physically. That's fine to start at that level. But for all of you, what I want you to be doing is refining that as much as you can, and being able to pinpoint, okay, well, yeah, under certain circumstances, when, for example, I'm feeling really sad and lonely, that's when I notice my asthma actually is a bit worse. And there can be all sorts of combinations. I want you to really have a think over the coming weeks what those connections are for you, and make them a conscious process. And as I said before, bringing that into your consciousness is certainly a step in the right direction in terms of dealing with that and dealing with the ongoing process of health and healing. So a very interesting topic for you, and it's something we're going to revisit from time to time in different ways, because it is my belief that most, if not all, conditions physically are affected to some degree by what's happening mentally and emotionally. Now, I know that's a really bold statement to make, and I guess you need to be thinking about it and looking at that from different ways to understand why one might come to that conclusion. And of course it's going to be more obvious for some than others, but I would definitely say that most situations we find an emotional component. Doesn't mean we always address it, but I would pretty well guess that it's there most of the time. Something to think about, okay? And so where do you fit in with that philosophy? How do you view your emotional state and how that affects you physically? What are your thoughts on that? And are you someone who thinks, oh no, there's no obvious connection there, apart from being stressed and sweating, heartbeat? There's nothing much more than that. Or are you someone who thinks, yeah, there is something in this, I'm not quite sure what it is, but it makes sense, there are reasons for me to believe that there is a connection. I'm interested to know where you fit in, because your philosophy on this, your reaction to your emotions, is going to have an impact on your overall health and your healing. So I really want to encourage you just to be broadening your boundaries a little bit. And if you're someone who thinks, well, yeah, definitely, I have no problem, of course emotions affect me physically, if you're in that category, then I think that's a good place to be in. And what I want you to be doing is just continually refining that so that you can understand that at a deeper and deeper level. And then you're going to be in a better position to be able to accept what's going on, and also bring about changes where changes need to occur. Alright, so today is all about just stretching your boundaries a little bit and taking this on board, having to think about it, and just being aware of your own reactions to what I've said today as well. Alright, so that's a lot to think about. It's a lot to take in, and have a read through what I've got written here for you, and have a run through the healthy activities, and we shall talk again in soon, and some of you I'll be seeing you in the near future as well in the clinic. So I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Okay, bye for now.